So the Scrum events, and I'm putting over here, what about refinements? Because we all know that refinement is not a formal actual meeting related to Scrum, but we all do it, right? All the teams where I have worked, they need to do refinement. But I have seen that all of the teams, or probably 99% of the teams, still have a refinement session, right? And the Scrum Guide, the new one, tells us that the refinement should be a ongoing activity, right? For some reason, we started creating meetings, and that makes sense. But the thing is, what I want to share is that we need to find the way that best works for each of the teams that we manage or that we work with, right? The refinement sessions, that's my theory. I think that they are not an official event because every team needs to figure out their own way, right? Their own format. I have worked with teams where we do daily 15 minutes refinement sessions, and we invite one stakeholder on each of the meetings, and we refine one story with the team. And at the end of these 15 minutes, yeah, like a stand-up, we end up with a good story, very refined story, and validated by the end user or by the stakeholder, right? So that's something that worked for one of my teams. That's okay, right? Then I had another team that will do 3-hour sessions of refinement, starting from the higher level of the story or the requirement to the lowest level, the most technical part, and everyone was over there, even stakeholders. Some other teams did not have stakeholders. That's good, right? And then there are teams that probably do 1 or 2 hours a week or every sprint, and probably they divide the meetings or the refinement sessions in two. The high level and with the business goal, right? And then they go with the team, so they don't lose time when we are talking about the business. They go with the team, and they refine the stories, and the PO is there for them, and he answers questions, etc. So the message here is, whatever works for your team, we need to figure it out, right? We need to figure out the best way to do the refinements, as long as I would suggest that we have enough refinement during the sprint to have probably 2 or 3 sprints ahead of backlog. That would be something that works for me. So sprint goal first. Another best practice or proven practice that I have seen that works is getting to the sprint planning and having the PO present some idea or some concept of what should be more valuable to create during the next sprint, right? The starting sprint. I have seen that this first step is the way to go, rather than what I have seen in many other teams related to the way they do their planning. So normally the way it goes, that I have seen it, is we have a backlog, right? Refine stories. In the best of the cases, the stories are already refined when we get to the planning, and then we just look at the capacity, and then we just drag and drop and put over there a sprint goal, right? But sometimes even in the sprint planning, we're trying to do the refinement. That's okay. But the message that I'm trying to say is, instead of first putting the stories in the sprint and saying, okay, team, do you feel comfortable with these 10 stories? Yeah, we feel good. Okay, that's one approach, right? And then you say, the product owner says, well, out of these 10 stories, this is the most important one, or these 4 or 5 have to do with the biggest feature that we're trying to commit to this sprint. Let's put that as a sprint goal. That's one approach. The other one is bringing first the sprint goal and then looking at the backlog and deciding what plan or what stories make sense for the team to take during that sprint so we can achieve the goal, right? It sounds like something silly, like that's not so important, Hector, but actually it changes the whole approach and the whole focus of the team. So instead of focusing on the stories, we focus on the sprint goal, right? That should be the most important thing. That's my tip when regarding the sprint goals first, before the sprint backlog, right, gets defined. That's the idea. The second one would be scope may be clarified and renegotiated with the product owner as more is learned. This is I quoted over there because it's a controversial topic, but what I'm getting from here is there have been many times when my PO or my developers, and I'm the Scrum Master or the PO, I get asked, hey, Hector, we need to change the priorities, or we need to remove these two stories in the middle of the sprint, and we need to add these other 2 or 3. And as an Agile coach, my Scrum will say, what do I do? What do you think that I should do, right? So over here, the Scrum Guide, this is part of the new one, the 2020, is letting us renegotiate the scope with the product owner, right? So my point in here, or my idea, is that as long as the stories that you're putting in or putting out make sense, these adjustments or these adaptation of the plan, if it makes sense in order to achieve the sprint goal, then I'm good. As a Scrum Master, I think I'm good. I don't have any issues. And the product owner is aligned with the sprint goal and with what we're doing by modifying the plan. I think that's okay, right? That's my point of view, and that's what I'm getting from the scope may be clarified on this text, right? So that's another one. Not the 3 questions. So in the Scrum Guide 2017, I remember that as an example, if you saw the guide, if you go into the guide, the 2017, you would see that the daily Scrum says, well, as an example, you can ask these 3 questions, right? What have I done in the last 24 hours or since the last daily, and what would I be doing in the coming 24 hours or in the next daily, and what are my blockers? These were mentioned just as an example in the guide. And for some reason, we all went ahead and started doing the 3 questions every single day with all the teams, and everyone is doing it still right now, that exercise. And I think it's okay, but I would like to share another alternative, right? The 3 questions have been removed actually from the Scrum Guide from 2020. So we don't need to ask that questions anymore. That's great, right? It was an example. We took it for granted, but now they didn't even put an example question. I'm guessing that because they were afraid that the whole planet was going to start again using that question, right, all the time. So what I can share with you is that I think that the daily Scrum meeting, the goal over there is to, well, first, it's a meeting from the developers, designed by the developers. The format is defined by the developers only, and it's a meeting for the developers, right? So it's a place where no matter what questions you do, if you want to keep doing that, that's okay. But the most important question is, hey guys, is the plan that we created at the beginning of the sprint still valuable, still valid for us achieving the sprint goal? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, let's keep working. Do you have any blockers? Okay. But if the plan is not working anymore, or needs some readjustments, or needs to be modified, then we do it, right? Then we discuss how can we achieve faster the sprint goal if we need to modify the sprint goal, right? Sorry, the sprint backlog. So that's kind of the main thing that should happen on the daily. That's my advice. That's my tip, right? So not only a demo, number 4, I have seen that probably 80% or a very high percentage of the teams still think that the sprint review is a demonstration only. And I think that the demonstration part is good, but it should not be our focus. Demonstrations can be done as soon as we get a functionality that needs to be validated during the sprint, right? What we need to focus, or what I would suggest that we focus our efforts on the sprint review, is on getting feedback from the stakeholders. I have worked with teams where I get to the meeting, the sprint review, and over there's no stakeholders, right? And the team is saying, no, we're going to present this really cool capability because this is what we finished this sprint. And they start presenting it, and then I say, well, who's going to give us feedback about it, right? Where's a user? Where's a stakeholder? And they're, no, it's just for us. And I'm like, no. The most important part of the sprint review is getting the feedback from the stakeholders, from a user that will actually be using the capability should be over there able to just try, even if it's in testing environment or whatever, or they should be able to get feedback about what's going on, about if the product or the things that the team is working on makes sense for them, and if it's valuable for them, right? If they need to do some adjustments to the feature, or if the feature will work for them and will provide value, right? So that's kind of what the message that or the tip that I want to give about the sprint review. It's not only a demonstration. The most important part is getting the feedback and seeing if we have to adapt the backlog for the coming sprints, or if the strategy of the product that we're creating is going in the correct way, right? So that's what I would say about the sprint review. Then we have number 5, which is related to the sprint retrospective. And for this one, I want to say three concepts. The first one is efficiency. The efficiency is being more efficient is one of the goals when we as a team get out of the sprint retrospective. We should be able to have action items that makes us more efficient. More efficient how, Hector? Well, with the interactions, with the use of the tools, with the access, with the communication, with all these parts, it's in the Scrum Guide, right? So we need to figure out what didn't work or what could be improved regarding these four aspects that I just mentioned, and then create action items that are easy to follow up, are transparent for all the team, and are, I had a team that will create all kinds of action items, and then the next sprint, they will open the Excel, the spreadsheet, and they will say, well, another week without doing this one, and they will put a plus, right? +3, +4. So the action items will stay over there for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then someone will say, well, this has been sitting in here for like a month or 2 months or 3 months. Let's try to do something, right? So this is somewhere that we don't want to be, right? And actually, the new Scrum Guide actually suggests that the action items that we create, and this was not in the 2017, this is very new, right? The action items that we create out of the retrospective, they suggest that probably we could even put them in the backlog for the coming sprint, right? Not even like a normal story that goes to the backlog and gets prioritized. No, they say specifically, you can put the action items in the sprint backlog for the coming sprint. And that's because they want us to constantly improve, to constantly be better at the way that we create value, right? Our value stream management system or process, right? So that's with efficiency, quality. So there are three concepts: efficiency, quality, and auto-evolving teams. We went through efficiency, quality. How can we increment or improve the quality of the code that we're creating, or the potentially shippable products that we're creating every sprint? Well, this has to do with the definition of done. So every retrospective, we should ask ourselves or our teams, does the definition of done that we have right now works for everyone, works for the team, works to create valuable products that have good quality, or do we need to raise the bar, right? Do we need to add certain things like this is not documented, or we need to put this verification to the code or whatever, right? So this checklist, the definition of done, is super important, right? So if you don't have a definition of done very clearly stated and very clearly defined with your teams, the invitation is to do it, because it will help a lot. Definition of done, definition of ready, this is what will help your teams not only provide better quality, but also to estimate, right? Because they will know where to start in the definition of ready of the stories and where the estimation ends in the definition of done, right? So this is just another tip. Auto-evolving teams. So probably the biggest or the most important thing about the retrospective is that we need to make, to help the teams be evolving teams, right? They need to be better every single iteration, right? That's part of the retrospective. So those are the three things that I can say about the retrospectives. And in general, that's about with the Scrum events.